You don't lose people's respect in a single moment. It doesn't come from one big mistake. It doesn't come from a burst of anger or a major failure in life. It fades, little by little, through the small things you repeat every day, through the behaviors you think are harmless, through the "it's no big deal" moments you whisper to yourself, a promise you didn't keep, a meeting you always showed up late for, a complaint you thought others would understand. Over time, people stop saying anything, but they begin to pull back their trust, then their expectations, and finally, their respect. You're still there, still yourself, but in their eyes, you're shrinking. You used to be the one they turned to for important things. Not anymore. You used to be admired, trusted, respected. Now, they treat you like just another option. And the painful part, you didn't even notice. You thought you were fine. You assumed they had changed. You didn't see anything wrong because no one said it out loud. Then one day, you find yourself off the list of trusted people. You notice everyone being careful with their words around you. You see them listening, but not with respect. And you start to ask yourself, why are they like this? And then the doubt creeps in. Did I do something wrong? Should I try harder? What did I do to make them see me this way? But here's the truth. It wasn't one moment that broke it. It was the daily habits you didn't notice. The habits Stoicism calls self-betrayals, silent acts of disloyalty to your own values. And that's what makes you lose respect, not just from others, but from yourself. Stoicism doesn't say you have to be perfect to be respected, but it does make this clear. Respect is a result, not a gift. You don't demand it. You become someone who deserves it. If you lack discipline, if you let emotion dictate your behavior, if you make excuses instead of owning your choices, then no matter how kind, talented, or well-meaning you are, people will gradually stop respecting you, not because they're cruel, but because they're responding to the version of you that you've shown them. So pause for a second and ask yourself this. Have you ever felt disrespected by others without knowing why? Maybe you gave your all, but still weren't taken seriously. Maybe you were kind, generous, ready to help, yet met only with silence and distance. Maybe you believed, if I just live with honesty, people will value me. But life doesn't follow that naive logic. People don't respect you for wanting the best for them. They respect you when they see you living in line with what you claim to stand for. You don't have to be flawless, but you do have to remove the habits that are quietly destroying your worth. Because if you don't, even just a little each day, then the respect you once had will vanish the same way. Little by little, there's something small, so small it often goes unnoticed, but it quietly destroys respect. It's not rudeness. It's not failure. It's not one big mistake that makes people walk away from you. It's an excuse because there was traffic today, because someone didn't send me the files, because I wasn't feeling well, because I was too stressed yesterday. Sounds reasonable. Right. You're not lying. You're just telling the truth. You're not avoiding blame. You're just explaining what happened. But Stoicism doesn't care about your reasons. Neither does the world. People don't respect reasons. They respect initiative. They respect responsibility. They respect punctuality, clarity, and reliability. And every time you offer an excuse, you're sending one unspoken message. I'm not in control of my own life. Once, people may understand. Twice, they may be patient. But by the third, fourth, fifth time, they stop listening to your explanations. They're left with one impression: you're not someone they can count on. I know this because I used to be that person. I used to show up late by a few minutes. Every time, I always had a reason for every mistake. I thought, As long as I mean well, people will understand. But no, people don't care what you meant to do. They judge you by what you actually did. And respect, it doesn't live in good intentions. It lives in repeated behaviors. I lost important opportunities simply because of one simple truth. People no longer believed I'd show up on time, deliver on time, or follow through. They didn't hate me. They just stopped seeing me as someone they could rely on. And for a while, I thought that was unfair. I thought, how could a few small mistakes erase all the good I've done? But then I realized, no one owes you fairness. If you don't show consistency, Stoicism teaches us, you don't control the circumstances, but you always control your response. If I knew traffic might happen, I should have left earlier. If I knew I tend to forget things, I should have planned better. If I knew my weak spots, I should have acted so they wouldn't become excuses. Excuses aren't always wrong, but they don't change the outcome. And if you keep using them to delay, to justify, to avoid owning up, you're slowly draining your own value. One excuse at a time. It's a form of self-betrayal. You're telling the world, I can't take charge of myself. And the world hears that, loud and clear. And the world starts treating you like someone who can't be trusted. Ask yourself, when was the last time I made an excuse? Could I have done better? Or was I just being too easy on myself? Making excuses might ease your guilt for a moment, but in the long run, it costs you something far more valuable, the respect others once had for you. Don't let that happen, just because you're used to saying, I had a reason. Self-respect begins with the courage to be silent when you've messed up, to say, that was on me, and I'll fix it. Because only when you can stand in front of your mistake, without hiding behind a shield, do you start becoming someone others truly respect. No one says you have to work yourself to the bone to be respected. No one demands you become wildly successful, talented, or decorated with achievements just to be seen as worthy. But one thing is certain, no one respects someone who is lazy. Laziness is not rest. Laziness is not living slowly or mindfully. Laziness is when you know what you should do, but don't. It's when you have the ability to act, but choose to avoid it. It's when you could move forward, but keep delaying because it's no big deal. Respect doesn't begin to fade because you failed. It fades because you never moved. Stoicism calls this wasting your life. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Don't behave as if you had thousands of years to live. Death is standing right next to you. Stop delaying. Be good now." I used to be that person. It wasn't that I didn't have dreams. It wasn't that I lacked potential. It wasn't that I didn't know what needed to be done. I just kept putting it off, waiting for the right feeling, waiting for some sign from life. And so, nothing happened. I watched others move forward. They were trusted, mentioned, chosen, and I stayed where I was, with a collection of unfinished plans. No one blamed me, but no one expected anything from me anymore. Laziness doesn't make noise. It's not loud like anger. It doesn't wound like harsh words. It's just a quiet silence, slowly making you invisible in the eyes of others. The more you delay, the less people expect of you. The more you avoid effort, the less people trust you with anything that matters. And one day, you don't just lose respect from others, you lose it from yourself. You look in the mirror and don't recognize who you are anymore. You start making excuses. I'm not doing it because I'm choosing a simpler life. I'm not chasing busyness like everyone else. I don't need to prove anything to anyone. Sounds reasonable, but deep down, you know the truth. Underneath those words is fear. Fear of failing, fear of effort, fear of finding out you're not good enough yet. But Stoicism doesn't let you hide behind that fear forever. Seneca once wrote, "There's nothing more frightening than wasting your entire life just getting ready to live. A life lived well isn't a life without tiredness. It's a life where you keep moving, even when you don't feel like it." Because people don't respect promises. They respect progress, even the kind that no one else sees. You want others to believe you're valuable. Prove it with action, not words. You want to keep their respect. Work, even when it's boring. Move forward, even just one small step a day. No one respects the person who always chooses the easy way when they're capable of walking the hard one. No one trusts the person who keeps saying, "I'll start tomorrow," because eventually people stop listening. They just look at how you live, and they see it clearly. You're not tired. You're not misunderstood. You're lazy because you chose to be. And respect doesn't survive in a life where you don't take yourself seriously. Respect doesn't begin with words. It begins long before you speak. It begins with the way you walk into a room, with your eyes, your posture, with the way you wear your clothes, with whether or not you took the time to prepare before meeting someone. And maybe right now you're thinking, what matters is who I am inside, not how I look. Sounds fair. Sounds like something an honest, humble person would say, but that's only half the truth. Stoicism doesn't tell you to live for appearances, but it also doesn't encourage sloppiness, because sloppiness sometimes is a sign that you've stopped valuing yourself. When someone shows up with messy hair, wrinkled clothes, dragging their feet, the first impression they create is this: "I didn't prepare." And that's a powerful signal, not about fashion, but about your mindset. When you don't care about how you show up, you're sending unspoken messages. I'm not important enough to take care of myself. This moment doesn't matter that much. You're not worth seeing the best version of me today. No one's saying you need designer clothes. No one's forcing you to chase superficial standards, but you must be intentional about how you present yourself. Seneca once said, "Let your outward appearance reflect an inner life that's been trained, never flashy, but never careless." I used to think I was just being simple. I used to treat messiness as a symbol of freedom. I used to tell myself people should care about my soul, not my shirt. But then I realized that wasn't freedom. That was avoidance. Avoiding discipline. Avoiding preparation. Avoiding the responsibility of showing up in the world with respect for myself. And the saddest part wasn't that people criticized me. It was that they stopped noticing me. They stopped listening when I spoke. They stopped turning to me when things needed clarity, because the way I appeared contradicted everything I claimed to stand for. Respect doesn't come from appearances, but how you show up is the first doorway through which others enter your respect. If you're careless with yourself, why would anyone believe you'll be careful with anything else? When you show up unprepared, unkempt, unfocused, you're not just lowering your own value. You're forcing others to compensate for your lack of readiness. Someone who shows up late has already lost points, but someone who shows up early, looking careless, loses even more. Ask yourself, if I were an outsider looking at me, would I trust this person? Do I see steadiness, self-control, and discipline in my posture, my presence, my walk? If not, then something needs to change, not to be more attractive than others, but to be more aligned with the values you claim to live by. Stoicism doesn't ask you to be polished, but it does demand that you be disciplined, even in the small things. Because respect doesn't come from promises, it comes from consistency. Consistency in your work, and consistency in the way you step out of the house every morning. If you can't see self-respect in the mirror, don't expect others to see it in you. There are people who never raise their voice. Never insult anyone. Never lie. Never act irresponsibly. Yet they slowly lose the respect of others. For one simple reason. They don't recognize boundaries. They ask too many questions. They call too often. They get too involved. They believe they're being caring. They call it being enthusiastic. They take pride in always being present in someone else's life. But in truth, they're crossing a line, not with harmful actions, but with a lack of awareness, because they don't realize every person has a private space that deserves to be respected, a breathing room. And even if you step in with good intentions, it's still an intrusion. Stoicism puts it plainly. Respecting others begins with not imposing your will on them. You might sincerely want to help. You might believe what you're saying is right. But if the other person isn't ready to receive it, you're becoming a forceful presence. Respect doesn't come from good intentions alone. It comes from understanding limits. I once lost a friendship because of this. I thought that texting every day, checking in constantly, being there for everything, was proof of my sincerity. Until one day, that person said to me, "I feel suffocated. I need space. And I need you to stop always being there." Those words hurt deeply. I felt misunderstood. I felt rejected. But then I realized I wasn't rejected because I was bad. I was rejected because I didn't see the boundary. I never asked what that person actually needed. I just acted based on what I thought was good. That wasn't love. That was control, disguised as care. When someone doesn't speak up, it doesn't mean they're okay. They're just being polite. They're trying to keep the peace, while I was quietly breaking it. The moment someone starts to feel the need to protect themselves from your presence, that's when respect begins to crack. You can be kind, but if you don't know where to stop, people will stop seeing you as a safe space. Stoicism reminds us, no one belongs to you. Every person is a free being, with their own limits. Sounds simple, but living by it takes real strength. The strength to step back when needed. The strength to not mistake silence as invitation. The strength to accept someone's boundaries without taking it personally. That's what respect is. It doesn't come from doing more. It comes from understanding your proper place in someone's life. You don't need to be part of every conversation. You don't need to jump into every decision. You don't need to be the first to know, or the one who's always there. Sometimes, the greatest form of respect is the right absence. Ask yourself, am I truly listening to what others need, or just giving what I want to give? Do I have the awareness to stop when someone has already said no? Boundaries aren't walls that divide. They're what allow relationships to breathe and last. And if you don't see the boundaries, there's a real chance you'll stop being seen in their life too. There's a kind of behavior that isn't loud, that isn't obvious. No one catches you red-handed. But once it's seen, you can't take back the respect you've lost. It happens when you claim something that wasn't entirely yours. A bit of credit in a group project, an idea someone else came up with, a compliment that, if we're being honest, was meant for someone else. You didn't lie. You just didn't clarify. You didn't steal. You just let others believe something and stayed silent. And in that moment, you traded your integrity for a moment of attention. You might think, well, I contributed too, or no one's really harmed, or who's going to find out? But Stoicism doesn't ask whether you were caught. It only asks, in that moment, could you still stand tall in front of your own conscience? Marcus Aurelius reminded us, honor doesn't come from how others see you. It comes from whether you live in alignment with your inner moral self. You might go through your whole life without ever being accused of anything. But you can't go through life without facing yourself. especially if deep down you know you were unfair. I've done that before. Once, during a group presentation, the audience applauded after I spoke. I knew very clearly the most important part of that speech was written by a teammate, but I didn't say anything. I just smiled and accepted the praise. It felt great, but only for a few hours. The next day, I noticed my teammates' eyes had changed, and then the eyes of the whole group. No one accused me, but no one really trusted me again, because they knew they didn't need to say it out loud. Sometimes, all it takes is one moment of withheld credit, and people will stop sharing their trust with you. Respect doesn't come from achievement. It comes from fairness. A person of ethics isn't someone who never makes mistakes. They're someone who never trades their integrity for the sake of looking good. You can go far with tricks and shortcuts, but no one will trust you for long. If they see that you're willing to take from others just to raise yourself up. Stoicism teaches us a very simple rule. What is not yours, don't keep it. Not even a compliment. The more inner strength a person has, the less they fear being outshone. They're willing to share the light with those who deserve it, because their worth doesn't come from recognition. On the other hand, the less self-respect someone has, the more desperate they are to shine, even if it's with someone else's borrowed light. So, you want others to respect you. Start with something simple. Give credit where it's due. It may seem small, but to others, it's the clearest proof that you are someone who lives with integrity. Ask yourself, the last time I was praised, did I share that praise? Have I ever said something that made others misunderstand my role, and I let it happen? If yes, fix it. Not so others will reevaluate you, but so you don't have to carry the weight of living under a false image. Respect begins when you refuse to accept what isn't truly yours. When you speak up for fairness, even if it costs you the spotlight. And when you're strong enough to step away from fleeting glory, just to keep something far more precious. Your honor. There's a kind of person, very smart, very sincere, maybe skilled, maybe kind, maybe never hurting anyone, and yet they're still not respected. Why? Because they can't control their emotions. A small piece of feedback, they snap, adile. They start blaming, somone disagres. They overreact. And just like that, they begin to lose the trust, the credibility, and the image they've built, little by little, over the years. Stoicism doesn't teach us to suppress emotions, but it does warn us. The person who can't control their emotions is the easiest person to control. You think you're speaking up for yourself, but others see someone who loses composure. You think you're standing for justice, but others see someone who can't handle pressure. You're trying to show strength and conviction, but what people really see is a wounded ego, easily provoked, easily cracked. And so people pull back. They don't criticize you. They don't argue. They just become more careful, because they know one wrong word and you might explode. And no one respects someone they have to tiptoe around. I used to be like that. I thought silence was weakness. I thought reacting quickly meant I wasn't to be messed with. I believed that being hot-tempered but honest was somehow a good thing, until I realized every time I got angry, every time I overreacted, every time I lost my calm, was another time I silently removed myself from the list of people others could trust. No one wants to give responsibility to someone who might lose it. No one wants to walk alongside someone who's driven by emotion. You might be the most talented person in the room, but if you can't stay composed, you'll never be handed true power. Stoicism teaches us we cannot control the world, but we always have the power to control our response. And it's in the moments when things don't go your way that people truly see who you are. Calm is not apathy. It's the quiet strength to stay steady in the storm. Maybe you've lost control because you were hurt. Maybe you reacted harshly because no one protected you in the past. I understand that. But if you keep letting your emotions lead, you'll live like a traffic light, switching on and off based on whoever passes by. But if you choose awareness as your strength, even those who dislike you will still respect you. Not because you raise your voice, but because you don't need to remain grounded. Ask yourself, am I becoming a victim of my own emotions? Have I lost respect just because I couldn't control a passing burst of anger? If the answer is yes, don't blame anyone else. Look inward and start training again from the ground up. One breath at a time, one situation at a time, one moment of silence when the old you would have reacted, because that's how a Stoic lives. Not to be liked by everyone, but so that when people think of you, they remember a presence that cannot be shaken. You've just walked a long road, from habits that seemed harmless, to quiet behaviors that slowly erode your own worth, from justifying and delaying to losing control, first on the outside, then on the inside. And if you've stayed until this very moment, I believe you're not just listening to a video, you're sitting with yourself. Maybe you saw parts of yourself reflected in all this. Maybe you recalled the times when people quietly pulled back their trust, and you didn't know why. Maybe you once blamed the world for being too harsh, without noticing the small things you kept letting slip each day. It's okay. Stoicism doesn't exist to shame you. It exists to bring you back to your original strength. Respect isn't something you chase, and it's not a prize that others give you. Respect is built from how you live when no one's watching. You don't need to stand out. You don't need to please everyone. You just need to become someone. Even you can't look down on someone who keeps their word, not because they're afraid to look bad, but because they honor what they say. Someone who doesn't make excuses, not to earn praise, but because they've chosen to live fully responsible for their own life. Someone who doesn't let emotions lead, not because they don't feel, but because they've chosen what's right over what's reactive. Respect begins from within, and only when you truly live with discipline, clarity, and integrity can you walk through this world without demanding anything, because others will simply feel it, not from what you say, but from the way you walk into a room, from the way you stay silent when others lose control, from the way you don't shift blame, even when the mistake wasn't fully yours. And then, one day, you'll realize you never needed to beg for recognition, because you've become the kind of person respect naturally gravitates toward. Keep this close, like a quiet vow. I don't need to be glorified. I just need to live in a way that is quietly, unquestionably worthy of respect. That is how a Stoic lives. That is how you protect a kind of worth no one can take from you. And if someone still disrespects you, still looks down on you, even after you've lived rightly, honestly, and clearly, let them go. Because Stoicism teaches this, too. Not every pair of eyes is a place where your worth needs to be proven. The only gaze that must stay clear is your own. When you look in the mirror, if you can keep that, you'll have something more valuable than all the respect in the world, your own. By now, you've seen what needs to be removed. Now it's time to rebuild something inside. Because if you only remove, but never rebuild, you'll find yourself repeating the same loops again. Stoicism doesn't stop at pointing out flaws. It reaches out a hand and shows you a path. Below are 6 values, each answering to one of the 6 habits you must leave behind, not as a moral checklist, but as a way of living, strong, grounded, and trustworthy. E. Personal responsibility. instead of making excuses. Respected people don't look for excuses. They take responsibility, not because everything is their fault, but because they are the only one who can change it. Stoicism teaches, don't waste your time blaming circumstances. Act as if everything depends on you. When you live with that mindset, you won't need to say much. Others will trust you because they see you don't push blame onto anyone. Self-discipline instead of laziness. Strong people aren't always motivated. They simply do what needs to be done, even when they don't feel like it. Discipline is the clearest sign of inner strength. The more you keep promises to yourself, the more deeply others will respect you. Epictetus once said, "No one becomes noble by surrendering to comfort." The more you choose the harder path, the path of action without external pressure, the more you become someone others quietly watch and learn from. Preparedness instead of carelessness. You don't have to be stylish, but you must be intentional. You don't need to look expensive, but you should show up as the best version of yourself. Being prepared says to the world, I take what I do seriously, and I respect myself enough not to show up sloppy. Someone who doesn't respect themselves can't demand respect from others. Humble presence instead of overstepping boundaries. Truly, respected people don't need to be in every conversation. They show up at the right time. They step back at the right place. Their presence gives others room to breathe. They don't ask too much. Don't press for answers. Don't drag others into their emotional storms. They stand like a tree, inviting nothing, rejecting no one, but always there. And that quiet steadiness often earns more trust than any loud personality. Integrity. Instead of taking credit that isn't yours. You may receive praise, but you don't keep it all for yourself. You may be mentioned, but you'll share the spotlight with those who truly contributed. People of integrity don't need others' recognition to know their own worth. You're not afraid of being overshadowed, because you understand true value can't be stolen and can't be borrowed. Marcus Aurelius said, only things that aren't truly yours need to be tightly held. The deeper the soul, the lighter the grip on achievements. Emotional self-control instead of emotional reactivity. You might feel anger, but you don't let it lead you. You might feel sadness, but you don't let it dictate your actions. You might feel triggered, but you don't lose your dignity. Stoicism calls this calmness with moral strength. Such people aren't cold. They're simply no longer easy to shake. Just because someone disapproves, they are trusted, not because they're perfect, but because they remain grounded in chaos. And finally, when you embody these 6 values, you'll never need to ask others, do I deserve respect? You'll know the answer. No applause needed, no spotlight, no one's approval. Just walk forward with discipline, clarity, and integrity. That's when respect is no longer something you chase. It becomes something that naturally follows you. Maybe you used to be someone people looked up to. You were trusted, included, waited for. You were someone who mattered to a group, a relationship, a family. Then one day, things changed. With no warning. No one asked for your opinion anymore. No one put you at the front anymore. No one cared what you said, even though you were still you, and you stayed silent. Because if you speak up, you'll seem like you're begging for attention. Because if you ask why, it might only hurt more. Because, deep down, you know, something in you isn't the same anymore. And on quiet nights, you begin to wonder, what did I do wrong? When did I start changing without noticing? Or maybe I was never truly respected in the first place. Those thoughts cut deep, without sound. No one sees them, but you know, they hurt. If that's where you are right now, let me tell you something. Not all distance is punishment, and not all silence is rejection. Sometimes, it's life's way of waking you up, to remind you that you've drifted too far from yourself, that you've lived too long trying to meet everyone's expectations, that you've let kindness become weakness, and patience become a trap that imprisons your worth. Stoicism isn't here to make you stronger than others. It's here to help you return to yourself, not the past version of you, but the one you can face in the mirror without flinching. You don't need to earn back anyone's respect. You just need to start acting each day like someone who deserves it. Every word, keep it. Every mistake, own it. Every morning, show up as your best self. Every burst of anger, let it pass without explosion. Every moment to share credit, let others shine too. Not so others respect you again, but so you stop disrespecting yourself. Maybe you're still hurting, still angry, still feeling it's unfair, because I didn't even do anything wrong. I get it, but be honest with yourself. Have I truly lived like someone worthy of respect? Lately, when was the last time I kept a promise when no one was watching? When was the last time I stayed silent instead of reacting? If you find yourself lacking, start by forgiving yourself, because real respect never comes to someone who can't forgive themselves. No forgiveness equals no change. No change equals still the same person. And that old self is the one the world stopped respecting long ago. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. Just prove to yourself that you're not that same person anymore. Step by step, small action by small action, choosing between saying something impressive and living something real. And one day, when you no longer crave validation, no longer chase attention, no longer bring up old wounds, and just quietly live as someone worthy, respect will return. Not loudly, not all at once, but in how people start listening more. When you speak, in how they wait for you to finish before they talk, in how they come to you, not for advice, but just to be near you, because they feel it. You no longer need to look respectable. You simply live with dignity, and that is respect.